Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to another full card breakdown. This time for UFC Louisville, we have ourselves a stacked 14 fight card. You know what, it may not have no Islam Monster versus Dustin Poirier, but 14 fights, all very closely lined, all accumulating to Cannonier versus Imavov. A fantastic card, and one that I am looking forward to from both a betting and a drafting perspective, as well as, you know, being a fight fan. June is going to be stacked for fights, and we're looking forward to it. Perfect time to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel. Plenty of content, whether it be over on Established Run with Brett Appley, whether it be with a cool bet and my best bets video, or whether it be right here. Lots of content, be sure to check it out, show some love. But with so many fights to talk about, lots of matchups to break down, I say we don't waste any more time. Let's do this. Get the fight night started with the 8-4 Puya Tomar versus the 14-7 Reyes Amandar. 115 fight to get the night started, and you know what, a couple firsts we had here. I believe Tomar is the first Indian woman to make it to the UFC, and she comes in here getting a pretty tough test in her debut, one where she is the underdog to it. That's the first. The other first is, according to Sherdog here, she's 4'9", and I don't really know if that's true or not. I watched a couple of the fights. I don't think she's actually 4'9". Tabellage says 5'1". I think we might go with that there, but that would be also a pretty funny stat here. But I do think it's a pretty fun fight. Right, Amanda making her third appearance, I guess, under the UFC banner. She hasn't been successful so far. She's fought pretty close, but she's someone who's coming in with a pretty hefty price tag. And when I see that as someone who has a recollection of Amanda's skill set, I definitely think that Tomar is going to be a live fighter here. Diving more into tape, I do think it's going to be a clear hindsight fight, where truthfully the fighter that gets off in the game plan is going to look like the hindsight favorite. I think Tomar has a very solid striking skill set, and she has power on the feet. I think she's pretty explosive, pretty dynamic, and I do like what I see from her. The big red flag from her is that ground game. That's something that Amanda kind of thrives in. Amanda isn't the best athlete. She can't always get those takedowns, but when in top position, she can be pretty dominant. She also has some pretty competent striking, pretty well-rounded. She just doesn't excel in any area, but this is going to be the largest skill difference she's ever had in a fight, and I do think that's going to be on the mat here over Tomar. So gun to my head, I'm picking a girl like Reyes Amanda. I don't like saying that. I don't think she's gonna be a fighter that projects well in the UFC, but she's gonna have a clear grappling advantage. I do think Tomar has some deficiencies, whether it be with a takedown defense and the overall general ground game. And I do think that more times than not, if this fight gets to the ground, Amanda's able to go out there and potentially even submit her. I do think she's just the better overall skill level on the mat. On the feet, though, I do think it's very close. If Amanda cannot get takedowns, and this is a 15-minute kickboxing affair, I think it's close. I think Tomar edges it with some quicker hand speed, potential power on the feet. But I do think it's one where the difference in the grappling is way larger than the difference in the striking. I do think Amanda can hold her own on the feet. And although I give the edge to Tomar, shall I go to the ground, the edge is gone, and it is all Amanda's here. So give me Reyes Amanda. She's my pick to win. Not most confident. I don't want to play her at this price tag. I don't think she projects well long term, but she does have a pretty favorable matchup in front of her here. DraftKings wise, we have ourselves a filled card. There are so many fighters on this card channel that you have to kind of dive through it, see which one fits best, and at 9.1K, typically Reyes Amanda would not be someone I'm going to. On a card like this, when you have a Rosas Jr., when you have Bruno Ferreira, Carlos Prates, there are so many star-studded talents that I do think she rates out as someone who doesn't really jump out, doesn't really stick out in a case like this. And for that reason, I think she's a perfect GBP pivot play. At 9.1K, she should go under owned. I think there's going to be way more popular options. And I do think if she is someone who can succeed so much on the ground, she could have a path to victory that scores very, very well on DraftKings. Whether it be an early finish on the mat, takedown success, ground control, ground and pound, I do think that path is there for her to score very, very well. Do I want to play her straight up over a Prates, Rosas Jr, or Ferreira? I'm maybe not chomping at the bit to do that, but I think she's a great leverage play. I think she's someone who's great in GP format because of her side. Will be liking to play her. Tomar is someone who's also interesting. 7.1K, I do think she wins more often than some people down here, but I think there are plenty of underdogs this week, so I'm not going and grasping at straws. She is someone who is also a fine pivot play. Again, I don't rate Reyes dos Santos that good, so I'm going to have some Tomar too, just in case this does end up on the feet for a long period of times. But due to the, let's say, deficiency that Tomar has on the ground, I won't be too anxious to play her because I do think there's a world where she gets taken down and scores 3 points. So pretty cool pivot play here. I do think I'll be getting to Reyes Amanda more than the field is this week just because of her upside, but it is one that I do think is going to be a pretty fun fight. Next up, 19-4 Taylor Lapilus, 21-6-1 Cody Stamann. Another really interesting one. Taylor Lapilus making his return here. He is someone who I think rates out as a very, very good overall fighter. He's a technician. He's very talented. I think he has skills in all areas, but he is someone who isn't maybe the most entertaining fighter. With all due respect, he's someone who'd rather win the fight than put on a show, which is, you know, what you want to see from someone, especially when you have your money on him. But he is someone who definitely doesn't rate out as the best DraftKings prospect. Cody Stamann, more of the wrestling based, a guy who does have some pretty good hand speed, pretty well rounded in his own right, but a guy who we have seen falter at the UFC level. He can be outstruck, he can be submitted in the ground, he does have his flaws. And I think although it's going to be a pretty interesting fight in terms of the dynamic of the takedown upside of Stamann, the way that Lapilus usually can be controlled, I just think that's one where the technique, the overall skill set is going to be in Lapilus' side of things. He has a very good ability to go out there and win minutes. Whether it be a bit boring, he's able to manage distance very well, land the more damaging strike, has phenomenal takedown defense to fend off the takedowns, someone like Cody Stamann, and even try to get to the ground, great get-up game too. I think the defensive attributes of Lapilus are some of the best in the division, maybe the UFC, which is a high praise, but truthfully, although boring, he is very talented defensively. Stamann is more going to be that offensive-minded fighter. I think in doing so, is going to be someone who has to crash the pocket. I mean, he's going to have an 8-inch reach disadvantage, so he's someone who's going to have to close the distance, and in doing so, I do think Lapilus just rates as a better defensive fighter. I don't know if I want to lay a minus 250, 300 price tag on a guy like Taylor Lapilus who doesn't have the same offensive output to cover that. But when it comes down to picking a winner, I do think more times than not it is Taylor Lapilus. Like I said, much better defensively, has the ability to go out there and manage distance well, fend off the takedowns, and win optics on the feet, because he's my pick to win. DraftKings-wise, though, he's my easiest fade on the slate, 8.9K. I mean, his 2 wins score 61 and 64. He is someone who is very, very low volume, very low output, doesn't wrestle offensively very well, doesn't always rate as the best finisher. He's not a good DraftKings score. At 8.9K, I would much rather a lot of other options. Flip side of things, I don't think I'll get to Stamann that often. I mean, he hasn't rated out that well. He's only scored over 100 points once, and that was against Eddie Wineland there, which has not aged the best. But the only reason I will be playing maybe a couple lineups with him is because Lapilus has such a good get-up game. If Stamann takes him down, Lapilus gets right back up. That allows for another takedown opportunity for Stamann. Maybe I'm grasping at straws there, but I do think at 7.3K, he is someone who does have a theoretical path to the optimal. But the more I talk about it, the less I like it. This is not a fight I'm getting too much on DraftKings. The pick is Lapilus, though. I just think he's so much better defensively. Next up, 10-0 Eduardo Moura versus the 8-3 Denise Gomes. A really, really fun fight. I love Eduardo Moura. I've had a lot of faith in her recently because I do think she has a pretty good camp and skill set and mindset, but truthfully, there's a lot of questions to be answered about her. Extended game and cardio hasn't really been seen too often. She hasn't really fought much resistance. She's just been a very, very dominant grappler who has had her way with women on the ground. Very, very dominant fighter. She has extreme strength. She fights the same camp as Shelton Almeida, so she has that similar game plan. She wants to take you down early and look to pound you out. Great submissions on the mat. Phenomenal ground and pound. She is a very, very dangerous fighter. And at 5'6" in this weight class, I think she's someone who is a very athletically imposing fighter as well. I really do like Eduardo Moura. Denise Gomes has had her shine in the UFC. I mean, she pulled off a couple underdog wins, both of being knockouts. She scored 132 points on DraftKings, but she is someone who has been able to pull off the upset wins. A ton of power in her hand. She's a great counter striker. Is someone who does have the ability to finish fights at all times, which is not what you see at this 150 weight class, but is someone who is very, very dangerous. I don't think she's the best minute winner. I think she's someone who can be hit in her own right, but she's just tough enough to exchange and go blow for blow with these girls here. But the big problem with her is she can be taken down, she can be controlled, and she's made her 2 opponents who have beaten her in the UFC look way better than they are. I mean, she let Angela Hill go out there and control her on the mat. Loma Lookboonmee looked like an absolute world-class wrestler against her. So I do think that Gomes is going to have some issues here against Eduardo Moura. And Eduardo Moura is my pick to win because of her prominent ground success. But the reason I'm not going out there and hammering Moura at this price tag is just because we haven't seen her tested too long. What if Gomes celebrates it later round? What if Gomes lands one of her powerful shots? Does Moura have that good of a chin? Does she have good cardio? Does she have good durability? Does she have the ability to fight through adversity? We've never seen that. So there are still questions to be answered. Still, at the end of the day, picking Moura pretty heavy here. I do think she has such a clear ground success path to victory, and I do think she's able to take down Gomes and dominate down here. She's got 4 inches of height, 3 inches of reach. She's a big girl with a phenomenal ground game. I do think she takes down Gomes and has her way with her on the mat. DraftKings-wise, though, one of my favorite plays. This fight is one I might be betting the under 2 if it still is plus money. I have not checked. I do think it's a pretty violent one. Eduardo Moura scored 127 last time in her victory, and in a realm with a Taylor Lapilus or Justin Jacoby above them. I do want a Moura. 8.8K, I do think she should be somewhat popular due to that box score, but she is someone who does have such a clear path to the optimal. Early takedown and finish success. I mean, she's doing exactly what Almeida did at heavyweight, and Almeida has been optimal on plenty of slates because of that. She's not the most expensive fight on the plate. She is someone who you can afford to get to 8.8K. I do love her. I'll also be playing some Gomes, though. 7.4K when she's won fights. Like I said, 132, 131. She scores phenomenally well. She has a ton of power in her hand. She has always come through pretty decently as underdog. And like I said, Moura has not been tested too much. So if this fight gets extended, if Gomes is able to still be around there around 2 and 3, she has a lot of power. She's a very live underdog at 7.4K. Of course, I prefer the Moura side, but I will have exposure to both of them. Should be a fun one. Next up, 15-0 Daniel Marcos, 21-6 John Casteneda, sexy Mexi coming back for what is a pretty fun fight. Daniel Marcos is a guy who's undefeated in the UFC, someone who I have I've been pretty high, I've been pretty low on. I've won money on him, I've lost money against him. He's been back and forth. So me and him have a love-hate relationship here, where Sexy Max has been a guy who I've loved to back. Nickname or not, is a pretty fun fighter. I do think it makes her a very interesting matchup. -110, -110. This fight is extremely close, and it kind of rates out towards to be a striker versus grappler matchup. Casteneda has the striking to contend with Marcos. Is he on Marcos's level with the kicks and the pressure and the technicality? No, but I do think the difference in the striking is way less than the difference in the grappling, and that's kind of going to be Casteneda's path to victory. Marcos is someone who can be taken down, although he has a pretty solid first layer takedown defense and get-up game. He's someone who isn't the best off his back, is someone who isn't going to offer much from the bottom position, and Casteneda has shown to be a decent wrestler. Additionally, on the feet, although Marcos is phenomenal, we'll get to him shortly, Casteneda is still a very good hand speed, very good power in his own right. He can mix it up very well, and that's kind of why the line is getting to be where it is. However, I do think it's one where I'm going to side back to Marcos here. I know I picked David Grant against him. That was just in a fight where I think that Grant had the durability to go forward, the unorthodox strikes to make it different for Marcos, and I do think David Grant won that fight. In this one here, though, it's pretty one-dimensional for Marcos. I think he's going to be the better striker of the two. And when it comes down to the takedowns, I think he's a good first layer takedown defense to survive the early attacks from Casteneda, who hasn't always been a chain wrestler. You add in the fact that also, Casteneda's been knocked out before. He is someone who I don't think is as big physically as Marcos. I think Marcos has an opportunity to go out there and win the striking exchanges, win the moments on the feet, win the minutes with the more impactful strikes. And I do think he's someone who's able to win this fight more times than not. At 50-50 odds, I will pick him. Am I running to play Marcos? No, I typically like my wrestlers, and for that reason, I'm not going to get to it that often, but gun to my head, my pick is Daniel Marcos. DraftKings-wise, I think Marcos is extremely boom or bust. 8K, he's at that price range. You could get to him very easily in the mid-range, but if a knockout doesn't score well, 54 and win against Grant because he's not going to shoot takedown. Or 104 against Oliveira there, where he was able to get a finish. So if he's able to get that finish, he could be a very solid play, but without that, not a ton of volume, a guy who will not shoot takedowns. So he's really finish or bust, and because of that, in a fight that could be closely contested, I may go elsewhere. Casteneda, the flip side, I think is someone who I kind of have interest in. I'm not picking him, so at 8.2K, he's not the most attractive option, but I've seen him go out there, utilize his wrestling. He's landed 3 takedowns in each one of his 3 fights. And I do think because of that, he's able to go out there and have some potential to score well. Like I said, Marcos has a pretty solid get-up game. So this could be another situation where Casteneda lands a takedown, get back up to the feet, he just takes him down again, and that could accumulate a lot of points at 8.2K. Again, I'm not picking him, so he is more of a contrarian play in the mid-range for me, but still someone who I'm looking to get to. End of the day, I will be picking Marcos to win, but I have more inclination to play Casteneda on DraftKings. Next up, 13-9, Andrea Lee versus the 12-9-1 Montana de la Rosa. We have ourselves a little rematch from a few years ago, one where Andrea Lee did go out there and get the win. Close decision in 2019, but since then, she is 2-7 inside the UFC. It has not been a pretty run for Andrea Lee. She's kind of been the decline, losing her last 4. This is kind of a win or go home type situation. Montana de la Rosa has not been as active as Lee, and her herself has a negative record since that last fight, but as someone who's been fighting some pretty good level of competition, a draw against Bueno Silva, Macy Barber, Tatiana Suarez, JJ Aldridge, these are all some pretty good fighters, and I do think she is someone who's been fighting a pretty good level of competition. Andrea Lee, of course, has been fighting some good competition too. She's always been at the top of the division, but I think it's been hard to get a good read on de la Rosa because we haven't seen her fight someone of her caliber in so long. So when it comes down to a close matchup like this, I completely understand it. It's a 50-50 one. It's a coin toss. I do think Montana de la Rosa is the better wrestler of the two. We've seen Andrea Lee taken down, we've seen her controlled, and we've seen Montana de la Rosa have success that way. Andrea Lee, additionally, she's looking older. She's 35 years old. She's not absorbing that well, and I think that although Andrea Lee is a better technical kickboxer, de la Rosa is not horrible. She can land strikes of her own right. Maybe Lee doesn't have the same athleticism or durability to withstand the damage coming her way, and de la Rosa can have some success. It's a very close one. I could go either way, but I think I have more intangibles to choose here in Montana de la Rosa, the younger fighter who has a grappling path to victory, who wants to avenge her loss, who has also seemed to be the more durable fighter of the two. I think I can like Montana de la Rosa go out there and push a heavy pace. Now, do I want to bet her and trust these judges at this point in their career? No, it could be a very closely contested one, but the pick is going to be Montana de la Rosa. DraftKings-wise, I'm not even going to talk about this one. Unless Andrea Lee is that washed, that de la Rosa is able to have some success, 7.7K, maybe I'll play her, but not getting to Andrea Lee at all. I think there are way better options. De la Rosa could be a good pivot play down low, but truthfully not my favorite fight on DraftKings. Projected to go the distance, projected to be a slower pace fight. Let's move on to the next one. Next up, we have the 13-3 Brad Katona versus the 12-5 Jesse Butler. Canadian boy, Brad Katona. A fun guy, but has been a guy who's been struggled to get UFC fans under his wing. Has not finished fights too well, although he's a pretty methodical fighter who called himself Superman. He's not getting finished in the UFC. The crowd's kind of paying the price for him, but here's his opportunity. Brad Katona's a -600 favorite. You may be wondering why. He always fights so close. He can't get finishes. How does he cover this price tag? Well, he's facing Jesse Butler, 0 in the UFC, got knocked out brutally in 28 seconds by Jim Miller. Now he's coming back here. There's a few things to note about this one. Number one, Jesse Butler, small sample size inside the UFC, but truthfully a guy who I don't know what he does best here. I think he's a primary grappler, but I've seen him in bottom position. I've seen him submitted on the feet. His durability is definitely a question, and that's only going to be exacerbated by the fact that he's going down to 135. I mean, this is a guy who fought at 155, who's fought about 170 before. This is a big dude making a big cut. That's only going to affect his chin more. End of the day here, the pick is Brad Katona. He's way more durable. I think he has a faster hand speed. There's way more volume, better cardio, better level of competition. I think he's the better jiu-jitsu guy of the two as well. Potential has wrestling success. I think he wins this fight way more times than not, and that is why he's my 600 favorite. Am I playing him or parlaying him with those price tags? Definitely not. But the question for me is just, can he finish this fight? I just saw Jesse Butler knocked out brutally last time. Does Brad Katona have that hunger to finish the fight the same way Jamila did? I'm not sure. I think he does. I think he has all the capability to go out there and beat Jesse Butler, whether it be with cardio down the stretch, whether it be with power on the feet, whether it be with a potential submission game, because I've seen Butler stuck in bottom position. I think Katona can do it. It's hard to say that, but I do think he gets a finish here. None of his fights have ended inside the distance inside the UFC, but I do think he has what it takes to get the finish here. I just think he's levels above, and I think they're looking to get him back on track. Give me Brad Katona to win. DraftKings-wise, though, 9.6K, and he has nothing but a pivot play because he's going to be so low-owned. He's never scored above 96 points on DraftKings, and the one time he scored 96 points was when he landed 173 strikes against Cody Gibson that time, something that Jesse Butler cannot put up with. It's going to be a question of, can Brad Katona get an early finish? And without that, I don't think he's able to even come close to the optimal at a salary of 9.6K. Because of that, very low owned. If you want to take a shot at him and hope he gets a 1 minute knockout the same way Jim Miller did, go for it. But truthfully, I prefer a Rosas Jr. or a Prates or even potentially a Rando Santos, someone who has more ability to go out there and live off their price tag. I think Katona wins very often, so very safe cash play. But how many times would be in the optimal lineup? We've never seen him score that well, and until we do, hard to put too much faith in him. And I'm not even talking about Jesse Butler. So give me Brad Katona to win. I think it's done. I do think it's a finish. However, I'm not sure that finish can live up to his 9.6K per salary on DraftKings. And then this is maybe my favorite fight in the entire card. 18-6 Carlos Prates, 9-3 Charles Radtke. I love both these guys. Last time Prates fought, 4 unit on him, was closer than I wanted to see, but he got it done. Charles Radtke came through as a huge underdog last time in his win, had him on DraftKings, had him on the money line. Both these guys have made me some cash. And I like both of them. I think they're both guys who are maybe valued differently by the market. I think Carlos Prates kind of be a bit overvalued. A ton of striking success, and I love him for that. One of the crispiest, best offensive strikers I've ever seen. But still, he can be hit, he can be taken down, and he is someone who is not a perfect prodigy. But with that range, with that technique, he is someone to look out for. Whereas I think Charles Radtke's a bit undervalued. He had a really underwhelming performance against Blood Diamond in his debut, and since then, has struggled to find his footing from the fan base. I mean, people haven't been able to trust him that much, but he has phenomenal power on the feet. He has a great submission and wrestling game that he doesn't use as often as I think he should. And he's someone who can definitely compete wherever the fight goes. Now, is he hittable? Yes. Does he always fight to the best of abilities? Maybe not. So I think there are worlds where he's a bit riskier to trust. But in this matchup here, I think this is a very close match. I think it's a very fun one at that. And one where I do think Charles Prates is going to be the way better striker of the two. I think he builds as the fight goes on. He's a better, longer, rangier striker with a 6-inch reach advantage. But Radtke has his paths. I mean, Prates is hittable. I think Radtke can have success, especially with the way that Prates starts off slow. Radtke can be able to find the power shot early. And additionally, on the mat, Radtke's the way better wrestler, way better grappler, if he can get to the hips. With all that being said, gun to my head, I'm still picking Prates. I think his striking is, truthfully, one of the best I've seen. Coming from a fighter who's only 1-0 in the UFC. Phenomenal range management, phenomenal power, and just great ability to find the target. He builds as the fight goes on, and I do think the longer this fight goes, the more that he's able to piece up Radtke and find that finish. A guy who can be hurt in Radtke. Am I playing him with this price tag? No, I do think Radtke can compete, and for that reason, because of how close I think it is, one of my favorite fights started on DraftKings. 9.2K, he only scored 95 last time against Giles, but I do think he has the opportunity to go out there and get a finish, score well. I think he's going to have the ability to manage range, and due to the aggressive nature of Radtke, I think that can force Prates into more exchanges and score well. Maybe he'll also be a bit overlooked considering he has a shorter box score, especially on a card with such high scores. I do think at 9.2K, he's a very appealing option for me. Radtke, again, 7K. I'm not picking him to win, but he is so live. At 7K, last time he scored 122 against Gilbert Urbina, 2 knockdowns, first round finish. If he wins, it's either going to be an early power shot, because I don't think he's winning minutes too often against Prates in the long stretch, or a wrestling-based decision, a wrestling-based finish, one where you can definitely get that against Prates. So at 7K, Radtke is one of my favorite GPP tournament underdogs, because I do think he has the opportunity to go out there and score well in a win. Does it happen 100% of the time? Definitely not. I think it's going to be a very hard for him to score that well, but he has the path. I like him way more than a Tomar or a Stamann or people we talked about already. And I do think at 7K, he's a very boom or bust option. If you're looking for that tournament play, I think he's someone who is very live to put up a high score. Still in picking Prates, so I'll have some of him as well. But Radtke just makes for an interesting tournament option. Give me Prates in a striking. That should be a phenomenal fight. And then the prelim headliner, the 18-7 Thiago Moises, 21-4-1 Ludovic Klein. This is one I've been wrapping my head around all week. I've done the tape, and both these guys have their flaws. I mean, I've trusted both of them and have lost on both of them, but truthfully, guys who I think have solid skill sets. Thiago Moises is a phenomenal wrestler grappler. He has a great ability to go out there and find the neck from top position to the bottom. Solid wrestler as well, and I think on the top position, he's going to be the way better grappler than Ludovic Klein. He's going to be the way better grappler than many people in this division. He is very good on the ground. He also has a pretty good ability to go out there and be technical on the feet. He can hold his own. He has solid in-and-out movement ability to win minutes that way, but not the most volume, not the most power, and I do think he'd be beaten on the feet. Ludovic Klein's a guy who I think is just this athletic freak, phenomenal head kicks, great ability to be a forward pusher, super buff athletic guy who's going to go out there and look to force you into clinch exchanges, force you into damaging spots, and look to be the bigger overall fighter. He bullied AJ Cunningham with that size, with that volume, with that power, with those kicks, and I do think that's something that he can definitely utilize there. The flaws with him, though, is he's someone who can be taken down. He was in the regional scene, but he's also a guy whose cardio has been a bit red flag for him. He seemed to be improving on it. He's someone who looks to be making improvements, and I do think he's someone who's finally coming to his own, being 4-0-1 with the one being a draw in his last 5. I also think he can hold his own on the mat the more he's making those improvements, although I do think Moises is going to be the way better grappler. All this being said is just, I think I'm leaning towards Ludovic Klein the more the week goes on. I 100% can see a world where Thiago Moises utilizes his range from the outside and then finally lands a good takedown and puts Ludovic Klein in precarious situations. Moises is that good and dominant on the mat. I do think, shall it get there, he can have some success. But truthfully, I've seen Moises broken. I've seen him walk down. I've seen him give up. I've seen him succumb to the bigger, more physical fighters. And that's what Klein is here. Klein is a very freak athlete, big guy. Not in stature, but in physicality and athleticism. And I do think that the offensive onslaught of kicks and pressure and damage Ludovic Klein's going to look to put on him, I do think it could break Moises on the stretch. Close fight, but I will be picking Ludovic Klein. On DraftKings, another interesting one. I want both sides. I'll just stay right there. Ludovic Klein scored 135 last time, and although I don't expect him to do that, and historically, he hasn't been the best DraftKings scorers, we've seen Moises broken. When Alvarez broke Moises down the stretch, Alvarez scored very well on DraftKings at 8.4K. I want that upside from Klein. If he's able to break Moises with damage and volume and kicks, a knockdown or early finish, that could score very well. Flip side of things, I just said Moises can finish this fight at any time. Phenomenal submission game. Is very dangerous from top position. And we've seen him score 113 against Costa, 102 against Giagos. If that's the case, if he's winning this fight with ground control, I want some of him. However, they're both boomer bust plays, right? If Moises doesn't get that takedown, he scores 60 points in a decision win so far. And if Ludovic Klein doesn't go out there and finish Moises, he doesn't have the takedown upside or volume to make up his salary at this price tag, especially on a 14-fight slate. So boomer bust, if there's a finish, I do think the winner scores well. However, you're playing into a lot of upside, more GBP based, but give me Ludovic Klein. Opening up the main card, 9-4 Punahele Soriano, 10-3 Miguel Baeza, another super fun fight between Puna and Caramel Thunder. Sick nickname, let me just say that. We haven't seen Baeza in a while, coming off a bit of a layoff. Honestly, you could say the same for Soriano, and I just want to get one thing out of the way. I think I'm kind of I got a thing for these Hawaiian fighters. I love backing them. I backed Soriano a bunch. I backed Maki Patolo so much, and he lost me a lot of money, but he has the tools. And maybe I love that punching power. I love their durability, ability to push to the fighter, but it's getting tough to trust Punahele Soriano these days. He's cutting down to 170. Maybe he'll look good here, but he's a very, very powerful dude with fight-ending ability in his hands, big stature, big hooks, but he doesn't win minutes, and he's a guy who, although has a D2 wrestling background, doesn't utilize it that much. He doesn't win minutes, and he fades after 5 minutes after that first round. So as much as I like him, as much as I like his upside and his KO power, he's harder to trust. Miguel Baeza is the complete opposite. Great minute-winning ability to compete in the mat, on the feet, good volume, good power in his own right. But his red flag is the durability, and he can be hit, he can be put down. He's been finishing both of his last 2 losses, and I mean, that's what Punahele Soriano does best. So I think we live in a world where there's 5 minutes for Soriano to hurt Baeza. If Baeza's chin is really that broken, the power of Soriano is no joke. It is legit, and you need to be able to walk through the fire. Stolzfus was barely able to do it, but he did it. And although Baeza is someone who I think is maybe more skilled minute winner-wise, facing a big dude cutting down from 185 like that, I think Soriano could go out there and knock his lights out. Here's how I'm going to play this one. Is pre-flop, gun to my head, I'm picking Punahele Soriano. I think for as long as these fighters are fresh, he is more dangerous, he has better durability, and a dangerous threat on the feet. But if it gets out of the first round, I'll live bet Miguel Baeza. The cardio Soriano is still not the prettiest, so there are red flags there. Very fun fight, very close one, but if you're going to give me the underdog price tag on a guy like Soriano who has that fighting potential, I'll take the shot in the round one upside and hedge out if it gets to round 2. So, fun fight. Give me Puna. There we go. DraftKings-wise, another fun fight that I want. I mean, Baeza can replicate the same path of victory that Stolzfus did. Stolzfus scored 132 last time, 4 takedowns, grinded out Soriano, finished him second round. I totally think Miguel Baeza can do that. He's got a ton of power in his own where he can finish fights. He's a very dynamic fighter. But Soriano, man, he's got power. When he's won fights, he scored 123 against Dorovic, 127 against Piota. He's a guy who has a ton of round 1 finish potential, and I do think he could finish Baeza in that first round, so I will be playing a ton of him as well at 7.5K. Another GBP type fight, because neither of these fighters are that trustworthy, but a fun one, and one where I am cheering for the Hawaiian fighter to get it done. Oh my. Speaking of GPP and hard to trust, 61 Zach Reese, 94 Julian Marquez. This fight is fireworks. This fight is going to be absolutely insane, but it is so hard to trust. Both these fighters are boom or bust, kill or to be killed fighters who have a ton of finishing potential in their own right, but also get finished in almost all their losses. Zach Reese, 6-1, we have not seen much from the guy. Big frame for the division, but is a guy who we've seen fought very, very low level of competition, has not been dragged into deep waters at all. And in his one fight, he was from bottom position trying to lock something up, got slammed TKO'd by Cody Brundage. Interesting look to say the least. Julian Marquez has wins in the UFC. He's pushed to the fire, has ability to rally late. He beat my boy Maki Batolo, but good submission game, solid power in his own right, and typically good durability, but that durability has waned recently. But albeit, he has fought the better level of competition, and I do think he can compete the longer this fight goes. To me, I still need to see more from Zach Reese. I think he is someone who has a very good offensive skill set early on, whether it be off his back and bottom position, whether it be with power on the feet. He's someone who can finish fights. But until I see him extend to the second round, I got to pick Julian Marquez here, because although Marquez can get finished, I don't think that's more than 50% of the time. I think that Marquez more times than not is able to survive early, weather the storm, and then be the fresher fighter in round 2 who's fought better level of competition, who can control from top position, who can land power back when Reese throws his wild and defenseless shots. I think it makes it for a very interesting one. So give me the Cuban Missile Crisis here. I think the better level of competition, more power, the more proven guy is that I'm going to take. However, it is a very close fight. Due to the waiting durability I've seen of Marquez, I will play some Reese because he has so much power in his own right and has the ability to finish fights. DraftKings wise though, one of my favorite fights to target, 8.3K, 7.9K, boom or bust, except for this one is one that I think the winner scores very well. Whether it be Marquez breaking down the stretch the same way he did to Phil Haas on Dan Contender Series, he has the ability to go out there and be there in fights, get a finish, and we've seen Reese knocked out before, so maybe his chin's and all that. Or Reese continuing his finishing way, 7.9K if Marquez's chin is shot, if he is knocked out the same way that Rodriguez knocked him out in the very first round. I do think that Reese can score very well. 7.9K, his mind is going to be on finishing the fight, and always is. He's a very aggressive fighter, and in doing so can score very well. I like this part on DraftKings. I think it's a fight that should be lined pretty close, and if that's the case, I want shots on both sides, but give me Marquez to get it done. Should be a phenomenal fight, though. Next up, 11-1 Bruno Ferreira, 15-5 Dustin Stolzfus. We just talked about Stolzfus beating Soriano. Here he is, facing another power puncher. Can he survive this time? And let's talk about that Puna fight. We didn't do it too much. Puna hurt him a bunch, and he rallied through and came back late once Soriano tired. And I kind of think that's what he has to do again here. Bruno Ferreira has a ton of power. He's a very explosive guy. He knocked out Rodriguez early. He knocked out Phil Haas. He's super dangerous. He's ability to finish fights from anywhere because he is so powerful. But he's a guy whose chin has been cracked in his own right. He's a guy who doesn't rate out as the best minute winner. Someone whose cardio we haven't seen tested really at all. He's a guy who I do think has his flaws. And when it comes down to minute winning ability, I do think it's Dustin Stolzfus here. However, the guy who has more opportunity to win in the fight in round 1, the same way Soriano did, is Bruno Ferreira. A ton of power. Stolzfus has been hurt early. He has been dropped. And I do think the guy more dangerous in that first round is Bruno Ferreira. However, if this fight makes it out of there, Dustin Stolzfus is a good live bet because he is someone who can grind his way towards success. So when we sit here, I think it's very similar to the Soriano fight. Gun to my head, I think I'd pick Bruno Ferreira early. But I'm very tempted at this money line for Stolzfus because the line is wide. He has the ability to grind out a guy in Ferreira. Is a better minute winner of the two, and a guy who's probably more proven. So it's just a close fight. I'm picking Ferreira, but I do think the line is wide, so Stolzfus may be a live play for me. DraftKings wise though, again, one of my favorite fights to target. Bruno Ferreira, 9.4K, when he wins, going to be early. His 2 wins scored 116, 109. At 9.4K, high salary to live up to, but I do think he has the potential to do so. Here's what I like though. Dustin Stolzfus, 6.8K. When he lost fight, especially against Magomedov, he scored 0 points. But in his 2 last wins, scored 132 against Soriano and 77 against Grant. I mean, he has the opportunity to go out there and score well. I think if he survives the early onslaught from Ferreira, he has grappling success. He has minute wing opportunities. At 6.8K, you may just need a win to score well and a couple takedowns. So I think he could break this late. I think he's a very live underdog to do well. I kind of like him as one of my favorite underdogs here. And I do think he's someone who I really play in my lineups. Fun fight. I think it's Ferreira early, Stolzfus late. For that reason, gun to my head, give me Ferreira, but we'll be playing some Stolzfus on DraftKings. Next up, 8-1, Rosas Jr. versus the 12-3 Ricky Turcios rebooked fight. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. I'm just happy it's happening again because I do think it's a fun one. The difference between last time and this time, though, is the fact that last one was supposed to be at Mexico City Elevation, and now we're not. How does that change things? Well, let's briefly talk about it. Rosas Jr., 19 years old, phenomenal grappling phenom, youngest fighter to make to the UFC, is very, very dangerous. 8-1, though, and a guy who has a ton of opportunity to finish fight in the ground. Great grappler, extremely durable, decent striking, but it doesn't matter. He wants to take it down to the ground. He wants to dominate you there. His one loss, we saw his cardio give out and him not be able to win minutes. When he's not in top position, he's not as dangerous because although he is extremely eager to get the fight finished early, he's still young. He still has to work on that cardio. He still has to work on his control. Shall his opponent survive the first round, which they often aren't able to. With that fight being at elevation, I thought Turcios could be live for a third round finish. I think I even bet it at plus 2,800 just because Turcios is a guy who has a ton of energy. He's always moving, always bouncing around, throws a ton of volume, has great cardio, great durability. He's a guy who is a solid underdog at all times because you never know what you're going to get from him. He'll always fight for your money. He's very hard to hold down. He is someone who's going to be most of the time, very eager to throw volume. But I do think he's a guy who can be beat. Although there's a 12-year age difference, Turcios is still young, still explosive, and I do think that he's never someone who you want to be betting against too heavy. But in this type of matchup, though, it seems like a pretty clear fight that Rosa should win. Turcios, although hard to hold down, is easy to take down. And I think in that matchup, Rosas Jr. has the opportunity to utilize the phenomenal ground game. You can take him down, put him in good position. And although Turcios has a very good get-up game, he puts himself in some precarious situations. He gives up his back. He allows himself to be taken that way. And I do think that Rosas Jr. can have some success on the ground, controlling him, potentially locking something up and scoring very well. Rosas, although 19 years old, a phenomenal grappler. And I do think he has more finish upside of the two. Maybe I'll look to get some late prop numbers on Turcios again. But until then, give me Rosas Jr. I do think he has the path to victory on the mat. And I do think he gets it done. DraftKings-wise, though, another fight I'm interested in. I think Rosas Jr. is going to be a popular option up top just because of his past box scores. 132 against Mitchell, 106 against Parent. And with a fight like this that has so many potential ground exchanges, reversals, takedowns, especially with the takedown defense of Turcios, who's been taken down a ton before, 9.3K, Rosas Jr. is a clear standard option, especially in cash, because I don't think Rosas Jr. gets finished too often here. I think that he's a fine play. Great takedown options, great finish potential. I think he's good. Turcios is my punt play down low. I know I talked about potentially that being Radtke, but Turcios 6.9K, I mean, he throws so much volume. He can get for reversals. He's landed takedowns of his own right in the UFC, and I know he has better cardio and volume than a guy like Rosas Jr. If he pulls off the upset, you get a big leverage spot over a big play on the slate. You guy who can get reversals, and you get a guy who's going to fight for your money. So the pick is Rosas Jr. I want both sides on DraftKings. Turcios is a very live 6.9K, but I think I'm going to pick Rosas Jr. to be the A side of this matchup and get it done. Co-main event, 12-4, Dominic Reyes, 19-8-1, Dustin Jacoby. I've been historically higher on Dominic Reyes. He's at a point of his career where I can't trust him that much, but I still think this guy's what it takes. He's a title challenger for a reason. He could have argued that he beat John Jones. Like, he fought very close with him. If his chin's gone, though, he's not the fighter he used to be because he is phenomenal offensively, but he can be hit. And recently, those shots have been putting him down. He now faces an elite kickboxer, Dustin Jacoby, who I also think is washed. I haven't been as high on Jacoby. Never have. I think he can be dropped. I think he can be hurt. I also think he can be grappled pretty easy. I think he can be blitzed pretty easy. And although he's a very good counter striker, I don't like his style too much. I don't think it translates well to the UFC against someone who can be very diverse. And this fight was 2 years ago. Reyes is minus 400. He's dangerous. He can compete on the ground. I think he can compete in the striking too with his larger stature and his phenomenal strike in his own right and the power that Reyes has in his hands. But at this point in his career, it's hard to pick him to win this fight. With his durability concerns, with the fact that he is facing a pretty good counter striker, I think Dustin Jacoby wins this fight more times than not, and I don't want to pick him to win, but gun to my head, he is my pick here. I don't want too much involvement on this one. I do think there's a world where Dustin Jacoby can be hit, can be dropped himself, but at least I've seen him get wins. Right, I've seen him go out there and knock out Young early, and knock out Kennedy and Jagu, and knock out Darren Stewart, rally against Ian Kutalaba. I've seen him be a version of himself recently, whereas Reyes just look like the same guy. But do I think that this line is wide? Yeah, I do. Reyes still has all the talent in the world. And although his chin's gone, he's still very offensively dangerous, can knock out Justin Jacoby, can wrestle there too. And we've seen Justin Jacoby drop the ball on multiple occasions so far. Maybe the bright lights in this co-main event are too big for him. So give me Justin Jacoby, gun to my head. Line is wide though, so I might get to Reyes. And on DraftKings, I think Reyes is the side of the two of them. Jacoby has the potential to go out there and get an early knockout, but he has to outscore Prates, Rosas Jr., Ferreira, Brandon Santos, Eduardo Moura. I think they're just better plays who have more grappling upside, more volume upside, because Jacoby is just KO or bust. Whereas Reyes, I think, is also live to score well. Do I want to play him over a Soriano or Radtke or Turcios, though? Probably not. I think this is a fight I sit back and I cheer for Reyes, get back to his old ways. I'll be sprinkling in some Reyes and GPP due to his upside, but I truthfully hope that Reyes is able to get a win here. I do like him, I do like his skill set. Hopefully his chin's still back. And last but not least, the 17-6 Killa Gorilla versus the 13-4 Russian sniper. Cannonier, Imavov. Fun fight. Very good main event here. 5 rounds in Louisville. I struggled with this one too. And Cannonier is a guy who blew my socks off last time. He absolutely decimated Vittori. I picked against him and he put on a record-breaking performance, his best ever. He looks like he's still making those improvements. Phenomenal power puncher, but he's added in volume, potential takedown threats, insane cardio, and he has pretty good durability too. He's a guy who has been doing great. He's been at the top of this division. Look at his only losses. Adesanya and Whitaker here. Whitaker was with a broken arm too. He's only lost the best of the best. And I do think that he's someone who is extremely dangerous with power at all times, with cardio, with forward pressure, and he is someone who I do like to back. Imavov's been in a bit of a role. I mean, he's been doing very well. He decimated, let's say, he is a very, very good counter striker. He is the Russian sniper. He does like to strike at the feet there. Good power, good volume, good technique. Also solid ground game with good ground control. He's able to mix it up wherever the fight goes, and I do think he's a very dangerous fighter. He's also going to be the larger fighter here, and I do think that could play dividends. I'll be honest with you guys right now, I have in my notes here that the last fight for Cannonier was just because Vittori had a block head and was able to absorb all the damage, and that I think that Imavov's the more polished striker of the two who should win minutes and win this decision, more likely being the younger fighter of the two. But I'm going against it. My gut is telling me that Cannonier can have success. I think that his volume, his pace, his pressure, something that could break Imavov. We saw Phil Haas tire out Imavov score well late. The 1-5 rounder was against Litze, who was labored from the stretch. If Cannonier can continue to push forward, if he can continue to go out there, maybe mix in takedowns, maybe show different looks, he has power, he has pressure, he has solid volume, and if his cardio was not just a one-off, I think he could pour on light here against Imavov and have some success. Now, the fact that he's 40 years old and coming off an MCL tear is very terrifying, but I like his work ethic, I like his pace, his pressure. Man, I think I'm going to pick him here. Imavov, although getting some solid wins, I mean, how much is a win over Litze, Buckland, or Shabazian compared to Jared Cannonier? Those guys are 3 guys who are just KO or bust. They don't have the same volume or pressure that Cannonier does. I think I'm going to go Jared Cannonier here. Interesting. I did not expect myself to do that, but he's my pick as an underdog. DraftKings-wise, though, I was going to say to play Cannonier. At 7.6K, he showed incredible durability, volume, pressure. Scored 155 points last time, and even in a loss, if he puts up 80, 90 points, he could with the amount of volume he has. I think he's going to push forward, score very well. Has 5 rounds to work in at 7.6K. One of my favorite underdogs in the entire slate. Imavov's a solid option as well, 5 round to work, but I prefer going with Cannonier here in this matchup. So give me Cannonier, fun fight, fun main event, and what a card. I've been talking for a while. That's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. And quickly running through my quick picks. Taking Jared Cannonier, Dustin Jacoby, Rosas Jr., Bruno Ferreira, Julian Marquez, Punahele Soriano, Ludovic Klein, Carlos Prates, Brad Katona, Montana De La Rosa, Daniel Marcos, Eduardo Moura, Taylor Lapilus, and Rayan Amanda. DraftKings-wise, there's a lot to go through, so let me just give you my favorite fights target as a whole. Ferreira, Stolzfus, Rosas, Turcios, Prates, Radtke, Baeza, Soriano, and Reese Marquez. Let's break it down section by section, though. I think Katona's too expensive to get 2 up top, so he's either your safer play or your GP plays are Ferreira, Rosas Jr., Prates, or Dos Santos. I don't like Jacoby. I don't like Lapilus. In the mid-range, Moura is maybe my favorite play of the entire slate. You add in the GPP upside of Baeza, Klein, and Marquez. That mid-range can be very, very solid. As underdogs, I love Cannonier. I love Soriano's upside. And I think that down low, the upside of Turcios is still going to have success too. The pivot plays off of that. I think Reese and Moises are phenomenal high ceiling upside plays themselves. And then down low, Radtke and Tomar have their upside as well. Hopefully I gave it enough insight there. Feel free to leave any questions you may have below in the comment section, just if you want to talk to me there as well. Betting wise, nothing locked in yet, but I'll play a lot on it this week. I think it's going to be a very violent card. I'll get there on some of my fighters. I like the lines keep closing. Maybe I'll even play some Katona inside the distance and cheer for some Canadian action. But I do think it's one where you have to check out my Twitter, @GamblesGordo. Friday night, I should be posting those picks, so be sure to check them out there. And be sure to check out some cool bet action as well. I'll be posting a link to that later, as well as established run if you do need more DraftKings information. Reignmakers wise, this is going to be my toughest one to pick, but let's go Eduardo Moura, Jared Cannonier, Rosas Jr with his reversals. Let's go Ryan Dos Santos, and the winner of Marquez Reese. But that's going to do it for me on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Be sure to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, show some love. I appreciate you guys sticking with me with what is a very big card with a lot of talk, a lot of yapping. But hopefully you guys made it through. I appreciate you guys. Wish you all the best of luck in your DraftKings and betting endeavors this weekend, guys. Let's make some money.